Hey, it's Drybear. And it's that time again. A brand new patch has gone out for Path of Exile 2, fixing a lot of the issues that we've been talking about for the Abyss League, so let's dive in. Now, overall, I think .3 is a huge step in the right direction for Path of Exile 2. It doesn't mean that it's free from issues and problems that need to be solved, but it's something that I think if they keep moving in this direction, as long as they're careful about some things that might get out of control, like performance issues as well as visibility. I think this patch has been pretty bad for that, but they have, with this patch, this hotfix, put in some really cool changes for the game that I think people will like. Just let me know what you think about that down below. The first one is they are adding in, or have added in, a short grace period at the start of your sprint where being hit with will not heavy stun you. So you have a small little invulnerability window where you won't be knocked over when you start sprinting. This is equal to the minimum sprint duration, so you can now never be stunned out of an accidental sprint. The minimum sprint duration has been increased slightly to support this change. I think this change is twofold. One, it is a quality of life change that makes the sprint feel a little bit better, but I think also, especially on console, there were people that are accidentally starting sprints. Even on PC, if you're finger mashing or something, you might accidentally start a sprint, and then you get heavy stunned and fall over, and this can actually cause a lot of accidental deaths, and was causing them, though to be fair, at least for me, it has been fun watching all like the meme, like old school Charlie Chaplin fallovers where people run through a room, face plant, and die because of it. Keep that in mind. The big downside there is that if you're in the end game and you do end up perishing for whatever reason, not only are you punished by losing a portal, potentially something else, like if you're in the middle of a trial, but most importantly, you lose XP. And dying in this game in end game is incredibly punishing, so I'm glad they're at least kind of caving on some of the things that feel like they're just a little bit too intense for an end game activity. The Undying Will monster modifier no longer affects other rares with Undying Will. I think that probably just makes the most sense at the end of the day. Players can no longer revive if they die while having a stolen Kurgel's Last Gasp modifier, if they end up getting one for themselves. The duration of the ground effects from the infested, cadaverand, black-blooded, proboscite abyssal monsters has been halved. I think this is, again, a step in the right direction. However, the abyssal monsters in general and the abyssal vibe, like the visual effect for it, personally for me is way too homogenized. I think from an artistic standpoint, it makes sense that it's all, you know, themed under the abyss glow. However, one of my biggest gripes with .3 right now is just the degradation of visibility and gameplay clarity that we have, that oftentimes if you're going into an area like an endgame map that's juiced, that has overrun by the abyss modifier, your entire screen is not only covered in green everything, but it's also fog and mist. And a lot of times it becomes very difficult to recognize some of these things on the ground. So I like the fact that the duration of some of the ground effects is being reduced. I think there's also some effects that need to just disappear faster if you kill the monster that spawned it, and also just needing some better clarity on what exactly you're seeing, especially things that can one-shot you. Next, Selena, the Blood Priestess, one of the two blood, like Vol priestess fights that you fight. Sometimes you end up finding her alone in some cases, but she no longer heals from attacks that hit player minions. I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but I've actually run into an issue several times in the duel fight with both of them, where they will just continually heal for long periods of time, like literally like 60 to 80% of their HP just gets siphoned out randomly and they fill up again. I know that the fight does have lifesteal on it as part of their blood mechanic. The priest themselves can pull from the Vol, you know, sacrifices on the wall and stuff, but I've also run into a few issues where it felt like they were just healing infinitely until they randomly just abruptly stop. So I'm glad that not healing on minions is a nice change, but I do think they need to look a little bit further into this fight. The sorcerers surrounding Torvian now have visuals indicating when they're actively empowering Torvin. I actually, the first time I did this fight, didn't even know this was happening, so I'm glad that they're making that change. Various skills used by the prisoner are now red flash abilities. That boss, the prisoner itself, such a cool area, very visually stunning, but there's a couple of abilities that he has that are kind of ridiculous, including the blood spray that he does, which depending on your chaos resistance can be an instant one-shot. It goes off almost instantaneously, and it doesn't even give you a warning when he does it. He raises his hand and all of a sudden, boom, instant death. So I'm glad they're kind of improving that. I think that's what the early access process is going to be for them. They just added a bunch of new bosses, and it's going to require some time to make those actually feel good, feel well represented, and make sure they have good feedback to the player as well. The Vessel of Kulamax cold beams now function better in a party. The hench stones, the beacons, and temporal tether all now dynamically spawn near the player on map completion, and many Act 4 monsters can now be bound as specters. Ancestral Warrior Totem now uses the weapon in the weapon set it has been assigned to, and no longer disappears if swapping to an invalid weapon or weapon set. This I can imagine being very annoying that it worked this way before. I'm glad they caught it and fixed it, but I'm sure you know, any board bringer that's been doing that out there has been driven crazy if they're trying to do weapon sets with their build. The Gemling Legionnaire's integrated efficiency passive skill now actually applies by modifying each skill, which means those modifications also apply to minions from those skills. The description has been updated to clarify that the bonuses also apply in the case where supports and skills are socketed together in meta gems. This is a nice little cleanup that will have, you know, it's not a sexy line item, but it's actually quite useful, and I'm glad to see that they're paying attention to Gemling, because I do feel like Gemling has kind of lost a little bit of its identity with the .3 patch, making basically everyone sort of into a Gemling Legionnaire, and I hope they keep looking at this specific Ascendancy to give it more spice over time. Chance to not consume crossbow ammo stats found on ammo conservation support gems, and the passive skill tree now roll their chance per ammo spent instead of once per skill use, meaning they interact correctly with the Hailstorm rounds skill. Their wording has been updated accordingly. Again, one of those things that's not really the sexiest line item on the patch notes. When you think about it, it has some cool implications for more of the rapid fire crossbow builds out there. They've definitely been playing around with what crossbows do and what Mercenary does in Path of Exile 2, but simple changes like this can really open up opportunities for other builds that might not be in the meta right now. Volcanic Fisher's Fisher limit is now displayed and can be modified by sources of +2 limit. I didn't realize this wasn't even happening. I haven't played Warrior this season just yet, but that is actually a pretty nice change. And Toxic Domain now requires a bow, spear, or crossbow to use. Not like it was a major problem, except for some very niche specific builds that people were using, but I feel like, you know, it's not like Toxic Domain was the skill that was breaking everything, so I was perfectly fine with it. His Scattering Calamity skill, granted by the Unborn Lich unique staff, now has duration between launching well sprites is 1.2 seconds, which can be affected by modifiers to skill effect duration. I actually have not used the staff yet. I think honestly, uniques is another area that they need to improve upon. It feels like the list of very useful uniques in this game are a little bit shorter, a lot bit shorter than I was hoping, especially in this new season with all the new uniques coming online, the Abyssals as well, and things like that. And I would like to see also potentially a future system where it allows them to scale early mid-game uniques that don't scale properly into endgame to endgame, so you can actually use them. I know they have a strong stance around making early game uniques that are only for early game and stuff like that, but I feel like the list could get longer. The Turn the Clock Forward notable passive skill once again provides 20% increased projectile speed. I think this was just an oversight. If you did notice this, there was a line space for this on the node, but after the patch, that line went away, and it used to give projectile speed, and then it suddenly didn't. They actually caught it and fixed it, so that's great. The Fairgrave's Curse bow can once again be obtained, so I guess they fixed whatever they wanted to fix about it, and they put it back in the game. Added a button to the character selection screen to have your character be logged into Town Hideout instead of the last area. That's an awesome change as well, and you can also do this, by the way. Oh, there it is. This is identical to the existing behavior where you control plus click on the login button. So again, if you're on PC, console could do it too. I'm not actually sure what the keybind is, but when you're logging in, if you control click on the character, it'll take you to Hideout instead of actually taking you to the last zone you were in, or if you're in a town or something like that. So now it just has a button to make it a little bit clearer that that functionality exists. Boulder ants are no longer considered beasts and have been temporarily disabled as a specter. I've been meaning to do some necromancer slash, you know, abyssal lich slash minion builds. I just haven't done one this season yet. I did some in .1 and one in .2, but let me know what impact this has for you. I know there's been some, especially with the mandible, like ice ant as well. There's been some changes here. What does this line item mean to you if you're someone that's playing a minion build this season, at least in the current setup? They updated the wording on Omen of the Sovereign, Liege, and Black-Blooded to clarify that it can only be used with weapons and jewelry. They updated the Molten Shrine world map icon to indicate that it provides a permanent bonus. I think a lot of people were missing this. They probably need to add a menu as well on the world map that shows here are all the bonuses you're trying to get, and then you can click on them and they go to where they're supposed to go. Last Epoch has this, since they have permanent rewards in their campaign as well. I don't see any reason why they can't just do that in Path of Exile 2 as well. Improve the performance of some Abyssal monster skill effects. Performance, especially in Abyssal, has been pretty rough for a lot of machines. Improved audio telegraphing for some monster skills. Improve the performance of monster modifiers and of Benedictus first Hell of Utopia boss fight. In general, I really like Benedictus as a fight in general. I think he's a little bit unfair to melee considering the spiral mechanic, the maze that you have to do. Range kind of just ignore that because they're at range anyway, but melee have to play that little mini game that's there. But overall, I think it's cool, and there has been some performance issues, so hopefully this is better after the patch. Speaking of which, they improved the telegraphing of his maze skill. I've actually had several people in my live stream and in comments on videos as well mention that they are playing melee and they're up against Benedictus and the maze spawns and they genuinely don't know where to stand. They're not sure where's the danger area, where's the bad area, am I out of the maze yet, I'm away from the rocks, am I safe or not, and they still get one shot and things like that. So again, I think this is an ongoing thing that as they add more bosses to the game, this is probably going to happen with Act 5 and Act 6 as well. They're going to come out, and then the telegraphing experience and overall feedback to the player is probably going to be missing or lacking in many areas. And over time, as they go towards release, they'll start making those more solid and well finalized as well. Improve the visibility of the 7 Pillars world map icon for Kima. Improve stash and stash settings navigation when using a controller. I've heard a lot of complaints about this. The hostile takeover quest can now be completed by speaking to Anji in any of your hideouts. Previously, the quest could only be completed by speaking to Anji in the Shoreline hideout specifically. This is a great change because it was incredibly confusing. I think if you are a brand new player that hadn't unlocked endgame hideouts yet, the flow worked fine. However, if you were like an intermediate player or even just any player that has completed the game at least once and you already had your hideouts, you would get to endgame, go to your hideout, or at least get to Act 4 and go to your hideout or something, but it would break the whole flow of the quest line, so you'd have to go find her in the right spot and do the right thing to get the quest done. And I even for like an hour or two when I first did Act 4, I had this quest up and I didn't know how to finish it, so I'm glad they're kind of breaking that chain there. The stash and guild stash in the refuge have swapped locations. Dodge roll effects and level up effects are now listed under their own sections in the extra tab of the cosmetics panel. I think they should also do this for some of the like finisher effects and some of the placements of the obscure microtransactions, because sometimes they're just really oddly organized. Re-enabled the Demon Fire Ember Fusillade microtransaction, and Time of Needs audio no longer plays in hideout areas. Next, we've got a long list of just generic bug fixes as well. So being unable to dodge roll out of sprinting with the keep sprinting option available, target objects while sprinting, bug with crossbow, Herald of Plague, Berserk, Feast of Flesh skill, fixed a bug with Leech, Living Lightning, Rapid Casting 3. So I just scroll through these if you want to pause the video and look at them. Some of them are very niche or specific, fixing a bug with some terrain in the Flotsam map, making so you get stuck and not get where you're supposed to be going. Fixed a bug where Navali would show up in your hideout unintended. Thank God that this is fixed. So Navali was like the hey listen version. There was a bug where if you moved her away from your waypoint, every time you came back to your hideout, she would teleport on top of it and just say, hey, did you miss me, kind of thing. It was actually incredibly obnoxious. So I'm glad they end up changing that as well. Fixed issue was spawning a checkpoint after opening a chest in a torn map. Act 4 issues, map no waystone issues. Magma Bear had an outdated duration tag, which wasn't accurate. Culling of the King of the Mist pulsates effects, fixed client crashes, instant crashes, and all of the above through the game as well. So another solid hotfix. I think they're kind of, they're backchecking. I think my big feedback around, especially like Act 4, is a lot of the new bosses they added, while they are very cool and cinematic, some of them can be kind of annoying. You're 10th time clearing them, especially like, the Act 4 boss that has like 3 separate phases, each with their own long duration transition with dialogue and forced waiting that goes into the next scene transition, into the next phase transition, and there's effects all over the place, and sometimes it feels like they're doing a little bit too much with the boss fights, but I think that can be reined in over time, and in general, I'm glad they're taking the time to make the act fights feel impactful and cinematic and really fun and cool. And a lot of the fights are very, very memorable in that way. So I'm glad they're kind of cleaning that up, and they're just gonna kind of have to do this probably throughout the course of .3 and go into .4 to make sure they're keeping up with, you know, some of the backlog issues that they've been creating. But that's it for the hotfix. Let me know what you think about the patch notes, things that you'd like down below, but also let me know if there's things that are missing, things that you'd like to see changed. I mentioned some of my preferences throughout the video, but I would like to see more changes being added to the game. Let me know what your requested change lists are for the things that are existing in .3 down below. If you found value in today's video, leave a like down below, leave a comment for the algorithm to help this video get seen by more people, and don't forget to check out my other channels for other content and other stuff and other things.